Talk about tetanizing frequency before we move forward. So what is tetanizing frequency? Tetanizing frequency. So remember, you have complete tetany, and there is a frequency at which you fire a chain of action potentials in order to maintain complete sustained contraction of the muscle. Well, that frequency is called the tetanizing frequency. Now, can we calculate it for in this muscle over here above, where we have the time periods displayed over here? Let's do it. So it's simple. It's just 1 divided by the duration of contraction. So contraction, duration. That means the frequency you should give an action potential. You should fire a chain of action potentials at to the muscle. Should be, let's say, 1 divided by, let's just clean that up a bit. That would be equal to 1 divided by, what's the contraction period? 50 is from 10 to 50. So 50 minus 10, that is 40 milliseconds. So this is your tetanizing frequency. So that should be around 25 hertz, if I'm not wrong. Do we understand? So if you gave 25 action potentials in 1 second, you will be able to achieve continuous sustained contraction, and that's what's happening over here. Have you ever noticed those, some police officers, they use a weapon called a taser. So it's that non-lethal weapon that they use to subdue enemies or suspects. What they do is it's a kind of gun which has got electrodes, 2 wires that shoot out of a small gun over there. Oh God, my artwork's horrible. That's just something like from Star Trek over there. So this is your taser gun, and there are 2 wires that shoot out with needles over there, and that would hit. That would penetrate the clothing of a person and go into their muscle, usually the back muscle or whatever, and it's going to release a continuous chain of action potentials, usually quite high voltage, I think 50,000 volts if I'm not wrong. But the frequency, if you see videos of how the taser gets used, you hear this little cut sound over there, very high frequency sound, like a grrr sound almost over there. Now this is your chain of action potentials that causes the subject to suddenly freeze in his place. He just gets paralyzed and he falls like a board. Why? Because his muscles are in continuous state of contraction, because you have fired at the tetanizing frequency over there. So that is how you can just think about this in practical aspects. It's quite interesting. Okay, so let's go into length tension relationship of the muscle now. So what happens is, if you stretch the muscle, you should get stronger contraction, right? They tell you before sports or in physical education class, don't forget to stretch before you start the workout. So let's talk about this a little more. And how does this work? What does it mean? If you look at the sarcomere, so this is a muscle over here. You can see this is the muscle over here, and here I've taken one sarcomere, and the sarcomere is from one Z line to another Z line. It's the functional unit of the muscle. Now the average length of a sarcomere can be between 1.6 to 3.6 micrometers. How much? 1.6 to 3.6 micrometers in length. This is the length of the sarcomere. So what happens is, you have this variation in length. And if you were to take a muscle, and again you were able to suspend it from that setup and measure the amount of tension that is developed over there. Again, this is a very rudimentary diagram just for you to understand what is happening over here. There is a setup. I have a muscle and I have some weights, or it is nailed over here to one side, and there is a machine that measures the pressure, and this is the alpha motor neuron, and I have an electrode. So this is your alpha motor neuron. Oh God. Okay, excuse the diagram. Okay, just use your imagination. This is the electrode over here. I'll draw the electrode in red because it gives electricity, and this is your muscle over here. Now, let's see what happens. This is the muscle. Now, what if I can just, change the length of this muscle, just stretch it out a little more, or put some more weights dangling over here so it stretches out more, and then I give an action potential and see the tension developed. Will it be the same? Well, it's not going to be the same, because look at this. This is your graph over here, which I want you to look at to understand length-tension relationship. So on the x-axis we have length of the muscle, and on the y-axis we have the tension developed in percentage of the muscle. Okay, so what happens is the average length of a sarcomere of the muscle is somewhere between 1.6 to 3.6 microns. Okay, you can't make it shorter than 1.6, and you can't stretch the muscle more than 3.6 microns. It will tear beyond that. So what happens is, I want you to understand that as the length is less in the beginning over here, this is how it looks, your sarcomeres. You have the Z lines over here, you could see, and this is the M line from which the thick filaments with the myosin comes out. And from the Z lines you have the thin filaments with the actin, which I've drawn in red over here. Okay, now look at this. When you don't stretch your muscle, when the muscle is at that relatively short sarcomere length of 1.6 micrometers, your actin and myosin is not completely lined up. You see, they're not so stretched out apart. So this myosin head, if you see, is not facing any actin to bind. So we've just lost the ability for one cross bridge to form and build some more power, so that is going to cause a reduction in it won't be as good. So this graph starts low. Then what happens is, as you stretch the muscle, you add some more weights over here to this setup over here, you add some more weights and you tie it over here, so it stretches the muscle, becomes longer. What happens now? The sarcomeres stretch out. Can you see they're stretching outwards? So the M line has moved a little bit over here. Can you see? So this M line has moved out a little bit over here. And what's going to happen now is I've aligned all my myosins with the actins. So this will definitely build up more strength of contraction. So the more I stretch up to a physiological limit, the better is the strength of contraction that I will develop. And this maximum tension is developed over here. You could see it reaches 100% when you reach a length where the sarcomeres are between 2 to 2.2 microns. So here, between point B to C on the graph where I plateau, it is where the sarcomeres are between 2 to 2.2 microns. Then what happens if I overstretch? That's not good. Like if you see in those kung fu movies, in one day the guy has to do this standing splits in the leg. That's not practical. You will damage yourself. You should do this slowly. And what's going to happen is you'll just damage your muscles, and it does eventually force stem cells to come in and stretch the muscle even longer, but you want to be nice and slow. Okay, so here we have the two Z lines again, and with the M line in the middle. Now when you overstretch the muscle and you make the sarcomeres very, very long, you are again losing the alignment. See, first it was not aligned in one way, then it's perfectly aligned, and now it is out of alignment again. The actins and the myosins are not facing each other. So you could see over here, some of the myosins drawn in green over here are not facing the actins. And if you stretch it more, even lesser. And finally, when you reach 3.6 microns at point D, what's going to happen? You are going to not have any actins and myosins aligned. So that is why you should not overstretch your muscles. You should gently stretch. And actually the best kind of stretching for sports is dynamic stretching, not where you do static stretching, sitting in one place and doing small stretches where you slowly force your joints to open up. It's more like the best kind of stretching is where you actively throw kicks in the air, swing your legs, like you see in the Shaolin movies over there, the Kung Fu movies. That is actually really good. That's been shown to be more effective in aligning your muscles to the right thing. So anyway, what's happening here at 2 to 2.2 microns is you have got all the actins and the myosins lined up, and this will allow for more optimal length to, for the muscle to reach its optimal length, the best length at which tension develops. And this usually corresponds to the resting length of the muscle. Now, what is resting length of the muscle? Resting length of the muscle is when you are completely relaxed in bed. Let's say you're sleeping and your muscles are totally relaxed, and you maintain a certain body position over there. So most of your muscles when you relax your body are at the resting length, which is usually the optimal length of the muscle. Or when you're just standing over here, okay, so these are your hands and these are your legs, you're just standing there like this. Now you just relax your muscles loosely, relaxly over there. This is your resting length, and this is the best position for you to develop the maximum length of the maximum tension, and so they kind of overlap. Not for every muscle, but for most muscles. Resting length and optimal length are usually overlapping over there. There's another length called equilibrium length. What is equilibrium length? If you cut the muscle from its bony attachments, then it will assume a certain length, and that length, when you cut the muscle from its bony attachments, is called the equilibrium length of that muscle. So some clinical aspects again over here. Not just when you don't forget to stretch before you work out. Think about, have you ever noticed porters when they try to lift your bag for you, and they kind of stretch their arms out before they contract the muscle and lift the bag? You should go to a railway station or some place where you get bellboys or porters, and you see they have a certain way of lifting they stretch their hand out. They make it straight, their arm, and then after that they contract the muscle. So this is something where they stretch out the muscle to get proper alignment and then cause the maximum tension to develop in the muscle over here. Now if we look at this, you should understand that the ability of your muscles to develop tension is quite significant. 1 square centimeter of cross section of your muscle, so if you take your muscle and you cut it if you cut it transversely like this over here, you can see in this Henneman principle diagram, if you had 1 square centimeter of your muscle, that kind of develops around 3 kilograms of force will develop over there. 3 is a safe number, so just be aware of that. Okay, let's just take that out. There we go. This is some other things we can talk about is this applies to the heart also, the length tension relationship. What happens is your heart is also a striated muscle, and when you stretch the muscle by how do you stretch the muscle? Filling the chambers with more blood. You are stretching the chambers more and causing more actin and myosin to align. So you can again get this same graph over here. And in the heart, we call this Starling's law of the heart. Starling's law. Starling's law. Frank Starling's of the heart. In which in case of tension developed, in place of tension we will say the amount of blood ejected, because more tension developed in the chamber of the heart means more blood is pumped out. So the what do we say, cardiac output, for example, if we are looking at the left ventricle, it pumps blood to the rest of the body, so we call that cardiac output. So one chamber, how much it pumps out per minute is cardiac output. Or even we can say stroke volume. It's in one heartbeat how much blood is ejected. Cardiac output is how much blood is ejected per minute. Okay, will increase based on the end diastolic volume, meaning when you fill up your ventricle, the ventricles are relaxed, and at the end of all of that relaxation phase, how much blood filled up this ventricle. That's known as end diastolic volume. This corresponds to length of the muscle, and stroke volume or cardiac output corresponds to the tension developed. So again we get the same graph over here in the heart. So within physiological limits, you will get maximum, as you increase the filling of the chamber or the end diastolic volume, you will get an increase in the stroke volume, the tension developed in that muscle, in that chamber. So that also applies to the heart, and we'll again talk about it in more detail there.